On the evening of January 24th, 2008 at 6 p.m., Darcy Carey, a young, attractive Washington co-ed, was driving down a narrow country road in pitch black darkness. She rounded a sharp curve that crested at a small hill, and as she dipped into the little valley, her car slammed into something, which later turned out to be an 85-year-old man who had been wearing all dark clothing in the dark and walking on the wrong side of the road. Darcy thought she had hit a deer and turned around to look, but she didn't see anything and continued driving on to work. Then she called her boyfriend, who was also going into town on the same road, to check on his way in to see if he could see anything. He called her back and said there was an ambulance there. Darcy freaked out and pulled over. She called her parents to come and get her. She was too upset to drive. Her parents came and got her, calmed her down, and then they thought they did the right thing by taking her to the police station. But by this time, the police had already called the Seattle TV News, reporting a hit-and-run vehicular homicide. The police claimed that the physical evidence proved that Darcy saw the victim before she hit him. Their conclusion was amazingly reached by theorizing that a supposed scuff mark left by the victim's shoe as it had slammed into the pavement from the impact, and the subsequent skid marks from Darcy's car were simply too close for any other reasonable explanation. In other words, she could not have reacted so quickly but for the fact that she saw the man moments before the impact. Police claimed that there was physical evidence in the form of acceleration marks that proved Darcy was guilty, and that's why she fled the scene after the crash. They also said the supposed acceleration tread marks and the snow tire stud grooves in the pavement were the same as her skid marks from slamming to stop after the impact. Finally, they claimed that after Darcy was arrested, both she and her dad all but confessed. This is an unbelievable story that went from bad to even worse. It became a nightmare of a case that had the police making up evidence to convict Darcy, the police coaching a little kid on what to say in court, a prosecutor hell-bent on getting a conviction, and a public defender that was ready to be an accomplice to the police, plus a judge that blindly followed along. The only saving grace was a dedicated lawyer that wouldn't back down because he believed in his client's innocence, and a smart and honest jury that did the right thing. Today, the Insider Exclusive presents American Justice, the Darcy Carey story, and how that dedicated lawyer, Eric Fong, at the law firm of Fong Law, got justice for Darcy, earning him the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best people's trial lawyers in the state of Washington and in America. He has seen many innocent and hardworking people become victims of the justice system, and because of that, he is driven to fight for people who have been harmed by the willful or negligent actions of others. Eric learned a long time ago that if a man hasn't discovered something he will die for, he isn't fit to live. And Eric's goals are not only to get justice for Darcy, but to make sure all Americans have the right to a fair trial, honest cops, impartial prosecutors, and fair judges with no agendas. Because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And justice and power must be brought together so that whatever is just may be powerful, and whatever is powerful may be just. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Seattle, Washington at Fong Law. It is my great pleasure to introduce Eric Fong to the show. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you.
What type of lawyer would you classify yourself as mainly?
It's hard for me to give you an answer because I represent people and I tell their stories, and I can do a civil case and I can do a criminal case, and I just do it, you know, and I love it.
Tell us a little bit about Darcy. Darcy was a young lady, right?
Yeah.
and she was on her way to work one early morning in the dark, right? What happened?
Darcy Carey, just a beautiful person, good person, never been in trouble. And she's driving in rural Kitsap County. It can be hilly. It's not a lot of people live there. And she's driving down a road, and she comes through a sharp curve and comes up a hill, and then the hill goes down into like a ditch. And then it rises again. As she came around this curve, up the hill and down.
And it's pitch black out.
It's pitch black. It's a narrow road. There's barely enough room for two cars to go back and forth. There's no sidewalk. There's no lighting. She hit a person.
Yeah.
She hit someone.
He was what, 82 or 85-year-old guy.
Yeah, he
but
was in his
at
80s.
that time, she didn't know she had hit
she didn't
a
know.
person.
No.
She thought she hit a deer.
She had, that's right. She had no idea what she hit. Her mind goes, it couldn't, you know, I hit a deer, it must have been a deer. There's tons of deer in the area.
Yeah.
She stops, she goes around to look, doesn't see anything, and she goes and she continues on to work.
Then she, on the way to work, she called her boyfriend, right?
Yeah, you know, because, you know, this was a big deal.
Right.
The impact was significant, and her boyfriend was going into town right behind her.
Yeah.
And she said, you know, when you go by this area, you know, take a look and tell me if you see anything, because I just hit something. I don't know what I hit.
Yeah. And her boyfriend called and said what?
Her boyfriend immediately after that called and said, you know, oh my God, there's an ambulance there.
Yeah. So she knew she hit someone there.
At that point, she pulls over on the side of the road, and she just freaks out.
And she calls her parents.
Yeah.
And they came to get her.
They came, they got her, they comforted her, and the first thing they did when they got, you know, settled down, went straight to the police department.
As most people would normally do anyway, right?
You would hope, yeah.
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 And what happened? That's when her nightmare begins, didn't it?
Well, the nightmare began before that. Immediately, as soon as the ambulances showed up and the sheriff's department showed up, the first thing they did was call the Seattle media and say there's a homicide. And before any investigation had even begun, they had the minute they showed up, for some reason, they created a story.
Yeah. Now, is this customary, the police show up at an accident, because theoretically it could be looked at as a hit and run homicide, correct?
Right.
But is it customary for them to call the media, the news TV stations first?
On something like this, no. You know, on bigger, huge things that shock the conscience, and you know, it's clear that there's stuff going on. Yeah, in that instance, they might. I don't know. You know, I don't know who or why they go about calling the media. What I can tell you is, I've never seen anything like this in this kind of case. You know.
Right. So they call the media. Darcy and her dad are at the police station, correct?
Yeah.
And what's going on there?
They start interviewing her and her family, and you know, start collecting statements and what have you. And you know, the thick and thin of it is you know, that's a scary setting. That's a whole nother discussion as far as, you know, the atmosphere and the environment and how, you know, people get along in that setting.
Yeah.
Having never been in it, I really can't tell you exactly what goes on, but
They ended up arresting her.
they did.
Yeah.
They
And
arrested her.
some of the things we're going to talk about in this particular case is how the police cross the line, how they sometimes do cross the line. She had no money, her parents had no money, so she initially got a public defender, didn't she?
That's right. So she was arrested that night. Immediately after she cooperated, talked to the police, told them everything that happened, they immediately arrest her. The next court day, I believe it was a Monday, she's charged with the crimes that she was charged with: hit and run death and
Vehicular manslaughter, homicide.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And she was appointed a public defender.
Right. And then how did you enter the picture?
Well, she came to me 2 weeks before her trial was set to start. So this happened in January. The accident happened in January. She came to me in the middle of May, 2 weeks from her trial, and I remember it. She said to me, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. My lawyer doesn't believe me, and I've got trial in 2 weeks.
And what did that mean, her lawyer didn't believe her?
What it meant to me was that
He wanted her to take a plea?
you know, yeah, probably.
Rather than
Probably.
defend her and
Yeah.
listen to her story.
That's probably what it meant, is that, I mean, there is no doubt she was innocent.
This was almost a case, well, it was a case until you entered it, a rush to judgment, wasn't it?
That's exactly what it was.
Because the prosecutor was hell-bent on getting a prosecution.
Yeah.
The police had basically lied in this case, right?
No, I don't think the police lied. I don't ever believe that the police or the prosecutors go out of their way to lie. What I believe is that they showed up and they like you said, there was a rush to judgment. The first thing they did was created some horrific scenario that justifies what they do, which is go out and catch bad people.
Right.
That's what they're asked to do. And they come across this scene. It's gory. It's horrific. There's a dead body. There's no one there. You know, they automatically went to the evil of what humans can do.
Hit and run.
Yeah. That someone horrifically injured this man and left him on the side of the road to die like an animal. And that's not what it was. But that's where their mind went. That's where their mind went. And they created evidence. They literally created evidence to support that conclusion. I don't think they were lying when they did it. I think that's what they wanted to see.
Now, Darcy comes to you. She retains you.
Yeah.
There are 2 weeks to the trial.
Yeah.
And what is your first motion? And we're going to analyze this trial a little bit because the deck was stacked against not only her, but also against you.
Yeah, it was.
And I want to analyze this and show how you turned the tables, basically, and let the truth come out. And if it hadn't been for you and it hadn't been for a good jury, then she might be sitting in jail. She might have taken a plea for second-degree manslaughter and be in jail for 5 to 10 years or something like that. So let's go back to the time when you were retained. You went before the judge and you asked for a continuance because you needed to get additional information, didn't you?
That's exactly what happened. So she comes and meets me. I called up the lawyer that was representing her, and he, kind of told me why she was guilty. The evidence, when you look at it, and if you take it as true,
this is her public defender telling you she's guilty.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And if you take everything as true as it was presented, yeah, okay, if you accept it as true. But if you look at it objectively and set back and just say, look, I think we need to do our own independent investigation, which is what I told the court needed to be done because it had not been done. Witnesses weren't interviewed. There wasn't a reconstruction of the accident. Basic fundamental preparation for a jury trial, none of it had been done. So my first thing when I go to court is I say, Judge, I need a continuance. We're 1 week away from trial, and here are all the things that haven't been done, and nothing had been done. There were some 24 witnesses, the neighbors, lots of investigators, medical experts, and none of it had been done. And I tell the judge, I can try this case based on the police reports as good as anyone, but no one can effectively represent Darcy because none of these things have been done. And the judge says, I'm going to let you in, but I'm not going to continue the trial.
What does that mean? I'm going to let you in. In other words, I'm going to let you represent Darcy.
Right.
Well, but I'm not going to, despite the fact that you need the time to gather the information to prove her innocence.
Yeah, I mean, that was...
What kind of nonsense is that?
That's I don't know.
So what happened?
That's what happened.
What happened next?
So I spend the week busting my tail to get ready for this trial. Work nonstop, and that's hard to believe. You don't eat, you don't sleep, and all you do is you just throw yourself into a room and you lock down and you prepare. And I did that. And I was going to go in there and I was going to win that case. I was ready and I was going to do it. But I tell the court, despite all my efforts, I haven't been able to do all this stuff. I need it done. It needs to be done so that the full investigation can be done.
And by the way, for all aspiring lawyers, as well as for people who maybe don't have an attorney that's not representing to the fullest, what you were telling the judge is important in case you need to appeal the case.
That's right. You gotta
put it on the record, right?
That's right. So there's two kinds of lawyers.
Yeah.
There's appellate lawyers and there's trial lawyers. Appellate lawyers can't make their argument if there's no record down below by the trial lawyer.
Yes.
And so that's exactly what I did. I made a record. I said, Your Honor, I object to this trial date because here are all the things that still have not been done, and they were big things.
Now, how receptive was the judge to you?
Well, when I said that, the prosecutor pounded the table, literally pounded the table, and shot up like a rocket and screamed, told the judge that I had just lied to the court and that I lied to the court a week before.
And what had you supposedly lied about?
That I had manipulated the system to get in, and now I'm lying to get another continuance.
Yeah, because
that's what
they were saying that a week ago you said you can try this
That's
case.
right.
And that was it. But
Yeah.
you said I can try it as well as any other lawyer, but I need the following, correct?
Yeah, what I said was I can try it as good as anyone based on the police reports.
Yeah.
Because that's all we had.
Yeah.
That's all any lawyer could have done because there had been no preparation.
How receptive was the judge to this?
Well, the judge, without even letting me respond, started, drilling me on ethical obligations of a lawyer and how you can't do what the prosecutor was accusing me of doing. And I said, well, whoa, hold on, Your Honor. Wait a second, that's not what happened. What happened was I told the judge I can try this case as good as anyone, but no one can effectively represent Darcy. Mm-hmm. And she says, well, we'll see about this. And she orders me to wait, and she went and got a transcript of the hearing that happened a week before.
Like she didn't believe you.
She didn't believe me. And she read it into the record, the conversation that I had when I asked for a continuance, and I asked to come in. She read it into the record, and it was exactly what I told her. And she tells the prosecutor to note it up for sanctions against me for lying to the court and for wasting all the taxpayers' dollars.
Even after she read it
That's
into
right.
the record.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the jury saw that your client was innocent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right. I mean,
And she was being almost railroaded by not only a biased judge, but also a prosecutor who didn't care about the truth, right?
I don't, it was a weird dynamic. It was a horrific dynamic. I would go to these hearings and I'd be sick to my stomach
Yeah.
and stressed out because of how hostile the environment was.
Eric, let's talk about justice in America today. Let's talk about fixing the system. What are the problems and how do we fix them?
Boy, those are complex and good questions that we need to be asking each other because the system's broken. Mm-hmm. No matter what side of the fence you lay on, if you're for the system or against it, we can all agree that it is not working. And if you look at the budgets of Seattle or in Bremerton, which is the largest city where this case happened, the counties, King County, Kitsap County, what you will find is that 70 to 80% of our money, of your taxpayers' dollars, are going to this criminal justice system. It's not going to schools. It's not going to help feed people who are hungry or to help people who are sick. It is going to the system that makes no qualms about it. We are here to punish you. Mm-hmm. And when you teach a dog to come, you don't beat it. You reward it. And for some reason, we as a country deviated and we decided we're going to punish people.
Right. And part of the problem is some of the police conduct themselves not in an ethical or illegal or legal manner.
Yeah,
what are some of those forms of misconduct?
Well, you can read about it daily. Mm-hmm. Evidence rooms, money and drugs come up missing regularly in evidence lockers across the country. Mm-hmm. The main one for the FBI in the West Coast, just this week or last week, there was a big discussion about what's going on here. Police officers on the street, God bless them, but they are exposed to things that you should never see in a lifetime. Yeah. They smell things, they see things, and they hear things that, I hope I never have to see once in my life, much less regularly. Yeah. Every time they walk up to a car, they are genuinely afraid that someone's going to kill them. What would that do to you?
Make you scared about your job.
It would.
Yeah.
It would make you scared about your job, and it would make you scared about the world that you're in.
Some of the other justice system problems deal with eyewitness identification.
Yeah.
Too much reliance on that because sometimes that's faulty, right?
It's notoriously faulty.
What about forensic oversight?
Forensic oversight.
Yeah.
Well,
Misinterpretation of data.
yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened in the Darcy Carey case.
What about DNA testing? That's not always, the access to it is not always there, is it?
I just did a case where it had to be continued months and months and months because of the backlog.
Yeah.
Still don't know what the
What
result
about
is.
false confessions?
False confessions, if you look at the data of the people that later on were exonerated by the late DNA testing,
Yeah.
of the people killed in this country for crimes they didn't commit, the majority of those, the error comes from a false confession.
Yeah. If you could say one thing to America and Americans about how to improve our justice system, what would you say?
I would say that we need to take a step back and we need to look at people as people who are good, and that people that if given the opportunity to do better would. Now, I'm not Pollyannish about this. You and I both have infinite capacity to do evil things and to do good things.
Right.
We have it, all of us, we have it in us. What we as a country need to do is get back to the basics and trust our neighbors.
In other words, give a person the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, what's good for me is good for you. Instead of, you know, we got to start working as a community to help each other.
Hopefully, many people will listen to what you have to say and there will be changes made. And I want to thank you very, very much for being on this program. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.